Good morning. Welcome. So glad that you're here. Happy Sunday to each of you. Welcome to those joining us online. We're delighted to have you as well. Welcome to all of our visitors. You are our honored guests today, and we're so glad that you're here. If you're visiting with us today, our worship service is a little bit of Unitarian Universalist insider baseball. And so I hope that you can hang in there. And if you have questions about what we're talking about, we're really talking about the future of our faith and where we're all going together in the next generation. So if you have questions, you come talk to me after worship, and I'd love to help you out. All right, so as we begin today, I do have just a couple of announcements. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who came up to the Capitol this week for the Great Salt Lake Interfaith Press Conference. And thank you also to all of those who made it happen. We had over 1,000 people from Utah-based faith communities who filled out postcards that were delivered that day to the legislators. And Unitarian Universalists wrote 434 of them. So good job. That's great. Now listen, y'all know we're not done yet, right? So we're going to have a lobby day this Tuesday from 9 to noon. And it's being sponsored by the Center for Biological Diversity, Utah Rivers Council, Great Salt Lake Audubon, and Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment. You do need to register, so just stop by the environmental ministry table after service. Let them know that you'd like to come. Joan's got the flyer there. Joan is the person who can give you the deets. Thanks, Joan. Okay. I don't have a pledge update for you today. As y'all know, Stephanie was out sick last week. She is back, so you might just say hello. However, we're a couple of weeks into our pledge campaign. We'd like to have all the pledge cards back by the 19th of March. That's our celebration Sunday. That's when we're going to celebrate all the great work that we've done together, funding our church for the year to come and getting ready for our new minister. So please, if you have not turned in your pledge information yet, please do that. The best way to do it is online, and that way you can update your personal information as well. But you can also talk to Stephanie in the office, and she can help you out. Finally, if you have been thinking about becoming a new member of our congregation, we're going to have a new member ceremony on March 5th. That's 2 weeks from today. That is 2 weeks from today, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. If you would like to become a new member and be celebrated on that day, please email me. You can come talk to me after service, but I won't remember. Guaranteed. I will not remember. So I'd love to hear from you, but also please email me and let me know, and I'll get you on the list. And finally, I want to welcome once again Nancy Moos as our lay minister today. Now, we settle down into the spirit of worship, and we begin by lighting our chalice, today with these words by Judith Quarles. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. Now I invite you to rise with me in body or in spirit, and let's sing together number 299.
I was sitting on the toilet, having just peed on a stick. The line was coming in pink. My greatest joy and my most fervent fears hit me at the same moment. Then the angel Gabriel appeared. Nancy, God has been most gracious to you. You are pregnant and will give birth to a son. You will give up your career to raise this child. It will be a great joy. Wait, I said. I think you have me confused with my mother. She's the one that raised all the kids. I will be a working mom. I will do it all, and it will be a great joy. Well, maybe it didn't happen quite like that, but looking back, it felt like a pivotal moment. As I tried to establish myself as a marriage and family therapist in a relatively small community, newly arrived, I desperately wanted to have it all. I fought to find work and to make a name for myself. The first in my family to get a graduate degree, the thought of not using it made me feel like a failure. But approaching the birth of my son, I just couldn't justify spending money on rent on a room that was mostly empty. I changed my mind and followed that calling from the angel Gabriel, and I was a stay-at-home mom. As much as I fought this calling, I immersed myself in the role. Nathan and I watched PBS. We read books. I videotaped almost every waking moment of his life at the first year, and many of his sleeping ones as well. There was nothing in my career that was quite as rewarding as watching him learn his ABCs. And all the names of the dinosaurs, like Pachycephalosaurus, which he had to teach me how to say. It was fun most of the time. When my daughter came along, I was excited and eager to stay in this role. She was so different, yet so wonderfully curious. She had a spirit that was uniquely hers. She danced instead of walking. She loved nature, and she brought home an almost literal ton of rocks every time we went for a hike. I relished the time I spent with them. We spent hours in the library learning new things. I made them, over the summer, learn about every state in the country and many of the countries in the world. Bethany always wanted to learn about the animals, and Nathan always wanted to learn all the statistics. He could tell you the square footage of each state. On weekends, we would present this information to their dad. I remember these times so fondly. I think I was pretty good at it. There came a time, though, when I forgot who I was, aside from Nathan and Bethany's mom or Philip's wife. I realized that I needed something else in my life. I called on the angel Gabriel to come down and tell me what it was, but he was a no-show. I realized I was going to have to do the exploring and figure it out on my own. This time there was no clear calling, so I let myself explore. I spent time as an aide in a special ed classroom in an elementary school. I took a job here as a religious education assistant. And while I wasn't unhappy, I was still searching. One day I ended up at the library looking for the "What color is your parachute" book that I felt sure had the answer. I watched the librarians for a while, and that's when it hit me. This is it. I want to be here. I did a little research and went back and decided to take a chance and go back to school. I would finish the year I turned 50. I'm not sure that being a librarian is a calling, but it's close enough for me. When I read about the tenets of librarianship, I thought, that's me. Intellectual freedom, digital equity, growing lifelong readers. These were my people. I recently had an interaction at the library that validated this decision. A woman approached me warily and asked for some help. It turns out that she was trying to apply for citizenship, and she'd received a letter telling her how to go online and set up this account. And she was so scared that she was going to mess things up and get deported after living in this country for many years that she was completely frozen. I sat with her and laboriously worked my way through the web page that had none of the same menu items as were listed in her letter. Somebody seriously needs to work on that web page. We got it done. We got through it. And her gratitude was so effusive. It made my day. And it made me realize that what I love about being a librarian is helping people without the resources to help themselves. One of the things that surprised me, and perhaps shouldn't have, was the way it made me feel to talk to kids about whatever they were interested in. To hold a STEM night at the library and teach and learn from them. Kids with so much curiosity. It gets me every time. I'll see their eyes light up, their eagerness to share what they know, like they're just gonna burst if they don't tell you. Some days, it's not really a job. I'm just plain lucky to be there and to share those moments with them. I love it. I love them. Igniting curiosity. That's what Gabriel should have said, and he would have had me from the get-go. I raised 2 curious humans as a mother, and my hope is that I'm raising many more curious ones at the library. I will always be a mother, but I'm also a librarian.
I invite you now into a spirit of gratitude. Gratitude for the things of enduring value in our lives, the things that last. All the best things made by humans take time and skill and dedication. Love that endures takes work. It takes communication and commitment. It often requires patience and courage. And it sometimes requires starting over from scratch. The theologian David Dark says that an institution is a myth with a budget. And I think that's true. And it reveals that the things that are built to last require infrastructure. A marriage, a city, a church. An institution is a myth with a budget. There's the story we like to tell ourselves about who we are, or more likely, the many stories, the individual and the collective. And then there's the way our stories get distilled into budgets and policies and documents. We must have both. When we talk about being on mission as a faith community, that's really what we're talking about. The story of who we are and what we're called to do. Without that story, the budgets and the policies and the documents are just paper, or at worst, a distraction or a punching bag. Without the story, we bring frustration and power plays to the work of church. The story reminds us that this is the work of love. This is the work of creating things that endure. But without the budgets and the policies and the documents, the stories become dusty paintings on the wall, telling us only who we used to be, not who we are. Without the infrastructure, the story loses its freshness and the urgency that moves us to action. And like all things worthy of love, it sometimes requires a radical reimagining, such as we'll discover in our sermon today. So let us open ourselves today to a fresh love of our faith. Let us open ourselves to a willingness to clear the slate and think about this faith as if we were very new to it. Let us put our hands on the infrastructure of our faith as though they were the studs and rafters of our homes, appreciating the strength that they've provided all these years. And then consider how we might make this house even stronger for tomorrow. Amen. friends, now is the time in our worship service each week where we take time to give back to this community in some small way. Our ushers will come through with plates, and we encourage you to give generously. We also have the QR code in the pew in front of you where you can give electronically. It's a time for gratitude for all that this community is, and an opportunity to make that gratitude real. So thank you. Thank you for your generosity. I want to start by saying thank you to our Board of Trustees, our committee chairs, and other leaders in our congregation who have spent many hours this year working on updating the governing and financial policies for our congregation. And I want to thank Reverend Ian for helping with these updates, because this is a vital part of interim work, preparing the congregation to receive a new minister and making sure that the minister has what they need to do a good job. And one of the most important tools for that new minister will be clarity, right? How does this congregation decide how to do its work? What do we expect from one another? How can we trust our leaders? And how can our leaders trust us in return? It's about clarity and accountability. Now, accountability is not something to be afraid of. What accountability really means is, how can we be responsible to each other in both word and action? How do we back up our promises? Without accountability, our covenants can become empty, just meaningless words that we repeat but that have no real substance. Accountability is the container that we build to hold our promises. And updated policies are that container made visible. So once again, I want to offer my deepest gratitude to our church leaders here who are working so hard to make those policies happen. If that's you, if you've been a part of that, would you raise your hand so we can appreciate you? Thank you. Thank you. It's such meaningful work. Yesterday, I drove up to Heber City to visit a friend, and it was a little nerve-wracking for me, as it always is. It's a beautiful drive, and it's mesmerizing for a southern gal like me. Like, look at all that snow. Oh, there's a road. Stay on it. And driving on the highway can also be kind of boring, right? It's just miles and miles of same old thing. And so I usually occupy my mind by singing along to the radio, or thinking through future sermons out loud, or, let's be honest, rehashing the same argument that I've had with this person for 3 weeks now. Still haven't won. Right, we all do that. And it's dangerous because every couple of miles, I would pass a sign reminding me that wildlife are active in the area and could run out in front of me at any time. And indeed, I did see deer grazing on the shoulders. And of course, Many of us have seen at least the videos this week of the elk herd that has been wandering around on Foothill Drive. Has anybody actually seen the elk? Wow. Yeah. It's beautiful, but it's scary, right? So this situation felt a little like an illustration of the challenge of writing today's sermon. On the one hand, it's about governance at the level of our association, which has the potential to be real boring. And the part where it's going to get real interesting real quick is where there's a potential change coming that could change everything you think you know about Unitarian Universalism. So my task is to make sure you don't sleep through that moment. I don't want you to be surprised. I just want you to have this up front. Be aware. During this sermon, we are heading up Foothill Drive, and there's a beautiful herd of elk up ahead, and we're going to be ready, and we're going to approach it slowly, and we're going to stop when we get there and observe its beauty instead of being afraid and freaking out. Then we're going to put the elk in the back seat of the car. Guess we're going to need a truck. I can feel this metaphor getting away from me, but stay with me. And we're going to take it to the top of the mountain, into the future. I don't know. Let's see where it goes. So let's start with the boring part. You might know that UU congregations are not technically part of a denomination. Each congregation is independent, and we are bound by covenant into an association of congregations called the UUA. We pay dues to the UUA, and they use that money to consolidate support for the congregations, things like support for lay leaders, training for ministers and religious professionals, religious education materials, all that kind of thing, and funding for our annual General Assembly. That's where the congregations come together to do the business of our association. General Assembly is where we elect new national leaders, update the bylaws, choose actions of immediate witness, which are kind of like social justice challenges to our congregations. And we also choose issues to study together as one large continent-wide faith community. And like our own congregation, the UUA's bylaws are out of date, but they're a lot more out of date than ours. The bylaws of the UUA stipulate that they must be reviewed every 15 years. And that makes sense, right? We would expect any organization to update its bylaws frequently to keep up with the times. But the UUA has a religious reason to update its bylaws every 15 years. It's because ours is a living tradition. You've probably heard me say that before, right? But what does it mean? Well, remember last week when we were talking about universalism and how that faith had to rethink its message every so often as the world around it changed, how the old messages of universalism lost their resonance, and they needed to reorient themselves in order to address the new realities. Unitarian Universalism is a religion that recognizes that the world is always changing, and we have to change in response. As Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams wrote, "For us, revelation is not sealed." Many other religions assert that the truth was delivered long ago and it never changes. But our religion claims that new truths are being revealed all the time, and religion has to keep up with new understandings of how the world works. So that's what we mean when we say that ours is a living tradition. We're heading up the canyon, folks. Y'all paying attention? Stay with me. Now, over the past 2 years or so, a commission of the UUA has been examining Article 2 of the bylaws. That's the part that includes our covenant, our principles, our sources, and our purposes. The last time that Article 2 was significantly amended was in 1985 when the seventh principle was adopted. Let me just bring this home for you. The principles have not been considered as a whole since the year of New Coke and Live Aid. Okay? I was in the 4th grade. Okay? Now, over the years, proposals have been floated to amend several of the individual principles. Most recently, of course, a grassroots movement among congregations has put forth an 8th principle, calling us to hold ourselves accountable for dismantling racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. But it's been over 30 years since we took a look at all of Article 2. And at the General Assembly in 2021, we finally resolved to do it. The Article 2 Commission was instated, and they have now put forth a proposal for the Assembly to consider at this year's gathering. The Article 2 Commission has held listening sessions, put out surveys, and produced videos to help gather information from Unitarian Universalists across the continent, and their proposal has officially been released. The proposal sets forth from the beginning that the UUA bylaws are primarily a legal document, and that's true for our church's bylaws as well. They are required by the state of Massachusetts for the UUA to operate as a legal entity. But UUs look to the bylaws for much more. We look to them, specifically Article 2, to describe who we are. We have used the principles and sources as a theological statement. We repeat the principles to interested onlookers as a sort of an elevator speech to tell them who we are and what we believe, right? Despite the fact that we claim to be a non-creedal faith, the principles have become sort of a creed, a statement of belief. Our congregation recently drew upon the principles in Article 2 as the basis for our participation in an amicus brief before the Utah Supreme Court defending the right to an abortion. And that demonstrates that the principles are also rhetorical in function. Now, if the principles serve all of these functions, then it is imperative that we consider them closely and often. Did you know that the current 7 principles include no active verbs? I know y'all are all looking now. Let me see, where's the verbs? But we consider ourselves to be people of action. A Universalist minister was once asked where his faith stood on a particular issue, and his reply was, "We do not stand, sir, we move." So why are there no action words in our principles? And as I've mentioned to you before, nowhere in the 7 principles can we find the word love. UUs frequently invoke the power of active love as a motivator for us, impelling us to dismantle oppression. And indeed, the 8th principle includes words of both love and action, but it hasn't been formally adopted. And so, the proposal before the General Assembly in 2024 includes an Article 2 that does not include principles. This is it. We've arrived. The herd is right in front of us. In case you missed it, if this proposal goes through, the UUA will not include principles in its bylaws. Instead, based on information from over 10,000 UUs who completed surveys and participated in feedback sessions, the Commission has proposed these 7 values, which replace the 7 principles in our bylaws. There are 6 values that surround the basic core value of love. Now, here's how this section would read if this measure passes. Oh, folks online, we've got a link for you where you can access this information on the UUA website. Okay, so let's check it out. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these values are. Now, this is where we're going to stop the car, and we're going to gaze at these magnificent animals and take some pictures and post them on Instagram. Okay, you ready? Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. And finally, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Yeah, let's just take a breath for a moment. Let it settle. It might be shocking to hear that there won't be 7 principles anymore, but that's not really true. They just won't be in the bylaws anymore. Nobody's saying you can't have principles. You can still have them. But if you notice what's here, the principles are there. They're unraveled from an old garment from the 1980s and rewoven into something new and stronger. Instead of calling us to beliefs, these values call us to take actions, and each one is sewn in with covenant. Now, someone will ask, what about the 8th principle? Well, you can see that the language is sewn in there as well. But just to be really clear, the authors of the 8th principle have been working side by side alongside the Article 2 Commission at every step, and they joyfully affirm the way that the Commission has included the language of the 8th principle in these values. So no one has to worry that the 8th principle is too long, right? That length issue is now moot. And every ounce of the spirit of the principle has been preserved in this language. And notice here once again that all these values are rooted in this core value of love, the primary value that moves us to action, the universal love that embraces the whole of creation. Love finally takes center stage in the common statement of UU theology. It's a big change. I know, right? It's a big shift for us, but responding to the world as it is now requires bold thinking and big hearts that are open to change. Bold thinking that accepts the need for new language to describe our faith, and big hearts that can grieve and celebrate the ways we used to do that. Now, it's not happening right away. This year, at the General Assembly, the gathered delegates will vote on a proposal for the congregations just to study this for 1 year. Unitarian Universalists will have a whole year to talk about it, think about what it means, make suggestions on how to improve the language. And then, at General Assembly 2024, the UUA will vote on finally updating Article 2 to express our common core values. So what do we need to do right now? Well, one thing that everyone can do is just spend some time with the new language of Article 2. Approach it in a spirit of gratitude for the work that national leaders have put in over the past couple of years. And let me just say, most of the leaders who have been working on this are lay leaders just like you, not ministers. It's lay leaders from congregations working together with religious professionals, but a lot of the work has been done by lay leaders who are just volunteering their time to put together these values. So think of it in a friendly way, not focusing on what we might lose, but on how it does represent who we are now and who we are becoming. Imagine how it would feel to talk to others about your faith using this language. Now, this issue is big enough that I couldn't fit it all into a sermon, so we're going to do two. There will be another sermon next week, and we'll dig in a little bit deeper. And in the meantime, you can follow the work of the Article 2 Commission and see how it's going on the UUA's website, uua.org. Y'all, we have a really unique opportunity right now to influence the direction of this religious tradition. I'm so lucky to be part of it, and you are too. What a moment to say what this faith means to us right now, to determine how we share the faith with the world in the next generation. Every Unitarian Universalist can be a part of this discernment. That's a really exciting opportunity. And I hope you'll stick with me in it. Let's sing to celebrate. Please rise. 318. We're gonna sing both verses and then come around and sing verse 1 again. My disclaimer, no wild animals were harmed in the making of this sermon. May they be well. May they be well. I spoke a little bit about what you can do right now as our tradition moves forward, updating Article 2, but some of you may be ready for a more concrete step right now. If that's you, you can apply to represent the congregation as a General Assembly delegate. The delegate process is more doable than ever before. You no longer have to attend GA in person, although it's an experience. You should do it sometime. And you can even participate as a business-only delegate for free. Our congregation, I think, is eligible to send 7 delegates. And we'd like to fill out our cohort. Now, it's a commitment, and there are requirements. But if you'd like to learn more about it, come talk to me after the service or send me an email, and I'll send you some information. For now, we close our service with these words, written by members of the Article 2 Study Commission. Everything we love about this community was created by people. There was a time before any of it existed, and then a moment, or many, many moments, when people came together and made the somethings we treasure most. And someday, a community will light a chalice and think back to these days and the things they love about what we created together. May it be so. Thank you so much, bell choristers. I know how hard you work on this music, and it really means a lot. Thank you. Thanks to David. Thank you, Palmer. And thanks so much to our volunteers who make Sunday mornings happen. Please come and have some coffee, talk about this proposal, get your feelings out. I want to hear it. So come talk to me. I'll see you soon.